profession or what you do first?
I'm an engineer and a writer, and I work with a lot of data organizing activities for NGOs, and I write for a lot of publications as a political analyst and an opinion writer. Wael Eskandar, right? Maybe I should have said that first.
You're a political analyst. How would you describe Egypt in a couple of sentences?
Right. I would have to use an analogy. I would say at this point in time, if you really want to understand Egypt, you have to understand what it's like for a mafia to gain control of the country. And this is how you should operate. But it's a mafia that is trying to cover its crimes using this shroud of legitimacy, which does not really exist, so they overcompensate. And that's the guide to understanding everything that's happening in Egypt right now.
When you call the current government a mafia, and you also call them fascist, are you afraid of yourself getting to prison or anything?
Well, when there are a lot of people that you've met and that you've known and that have really done nothing wrong and they're in prison, yes, you get afraid that, or rather worried that you might end up being in prison. So, by definition of me describing them as such is a threat to me. Like, if fascists don't accept criticism very well, and they don't want to be called out on anything they do.
How many people do you know went to prison after the revolution in the last 4 years?
I've always put off counting how many that I know. I don't have a number, and I don't want to have a number. And the reason is that it'll make me really, really sad.
How could the revolution have gone so wrong in so many ways within just 4 years?
The revolution was always a question of resources. The only thing that the revolution had going for it is human resources, which is people going out to protest for their dignity and against corruption. And so I would say what went wrong is that in the face of a lot more resources, guns, media channels, and a lot of other ways with which you can manipulate people, the revolution lost steam, and we lost people, and we lost that patience to change things. And so people have become very impatient and feel that they've had enough. That's how it happened. People just feel they can't do this anymore. They can't take risks. Their livelihood, their resources are all controlled by the government, and the government is withholding all of that. So why should they continue? Why should they continue? That's what happened to the revolution. And everyone that's ever opposed the government is targeted in some way or another. Like, being in prison is one form of targeting, but there are a lot of other forms, like threats, blackmail, assaults, court cases. There's so many different things that happen as well that end up causing this this sort of silence, or just people losing steam.
If we had filmed you in Cairo, is there one place specific in مثلا وسط البلد in downtown Cairo that still reminds you of the soul, the dynamics of the uprising?
Well, every inch that I've walked through reminds me of it, but There is one particular street that reminds me of a triumphant moment despite everything, and that is Mahmoud Street. That's certainly one of the most triumphant places where the graffiti and the documentation of our history has sort of survived to a great extent. And it's really funny because graffiti is so temporary, and like that is what remains. Something that was designed to be so temporary is the longest lasting evidence of our revolutionary triumph. So it's a bit ironic.
When the police helped me in the beginning of September, they always asked me, what is the real revolution that Egypt saw? Is it the 25th of January 2011, or the uprising in 2013 that brought down the Muslim Brotherhood? What is your stance on this, on these questions coming from security services?
They want to write history in such a way that January 25th is a conspiracy and that June 30th is the real revolution. My own position is there is only one revolution, and it is January 25th. And it's not in terms of a revolution. It revolutionized minds in a positive way. June 30th was a wave that resulted from awareness, but the results, the aftermath, was extremely horrible. It was more of a counter-revolution, having been hijacked on the 3rd of July, and mostly on a very special day called 26th of July, where people went out and gave Sisi a mandate to fight terror when there really wasn't so much at that point. And that mandate became an excuse to oppress and keep people in prison, and it was an excuse for a fascist regime.
But on the other hand, when I talk to my family or to the majority of Egyptians, they're perfectly fine with the situation, the political situation, as it is now in Egypt.
Well, they're fine because they really dislike the Brotherhood, and the Brotherhood have really messed things up for everyone. Instead of fighting a brutal police force, they empowered them and they wanted to co-opt them to their benefit. Instead of trying to have more tolerance, they used the same old regime techniques of sowing sectarian discord. And they were even far more blunt about it. And they just created a lot of tension. So a lot of communities felt very alienated. And so why would you choose a different oppressor that's even more extreme, or so they thought, than the one that you had before? There was no benefit. And so they're very happy to get rid of a problem that they faced. But it's that fatigue, and it's also that hope that things will change for better that is giving them this idea that things might get better, like that support comes from the hope. And I think it's slowly fading away, but it explains a lot about how people react to it, right? So your family, they probably have some liberal values there, or even if they have religious values, it doesn't really matter, because what happened is the Brotherhood came and they said liberal values are horrible, and then in the name of the conservative values they did things that are also horrible. So they alienated everyone.
Let's talk about young people. Egypt has an entire generation on the run and outside of the country. I don't know, like, I still have you in Cairo, I still have another couple of friends, but a lot of cousins left. I think it's in the thousands that people leave either to Europe or to the Emirates and to the Gulf states to work. Are you one of the last sort of lone rangers in Egypt who is sort of still fighting for revolutionary aims?
No, I wouldn't put it that way. I mean, you have to remember that people like me are just vocal, and a lot of the vocal people are targeted, and that the real revolution with all these hundreds of thousands of people who went out were actually very normal people. You're talking about working class, middle class, and they were never that vocal. They, media does not have access to them, and there's plenty of those around, right? I mean, at the moment they're silent, and some of the people are leaving because of it's job opportunities. Like, the economy is doing horribly with the military taking over a lot of businesses. There are no prospects. There's no real stability, not the one that gives you the economic progress, real economic progress. And so there is a mass exodus, because that's generally how things have been when things were bad in Egypt, right? That happened also all throughout the 70s and 80s. But what I can say is that there are a lot of people that are still like me. I'm not the last standing person. Otherwise, it would be really futile to even say anything. There are so many people that are there. They believe in the same things I do, that they're so overshadowed by the loud voice of support at the moment. So there's plenty more.
When we met up with a mutual friend, Abdurrahman, he said it feels like when you walk through downtown Cairo as if nothing ever happened, as if there was no revolution and there was no street fights for the last 3 or 4 years. If really nothing ever changed. There's new paint on the buildings, the streets are open, there's police all over the place. It feels safe in terms of whatever, really. What is your stand on that? How do you see our friends stand on it?
No, I wouldn't say it's completely disappeared. I mean, there are pockets where you can still see that. It just feels like that sometimes, because we have been so defeated that it feels that there's nothing. But the traces are there. You walk through downtown, and I mean, not even just Mahmoud, where it's really, really vibrant and apparent. But if you go to certain places downtown, you find these little graffiti pieces that they didn't even bother to remove. You find a couple of things that have changed. It's just like these pockets of memory that are there. But I would imagine many would feel nothing has happened because of how mad it's all become here, right? It's become so mad that that you can't even talk to people. You can't even discuss an idea without accusations of treason, accusations of foreign intervention, accusations of conspiracy theories, like these unrealistic plots, right? Recently, they were saying that the new kind of war is that they're going to use natural disasters against Egypt to take it down. And earlier, that whole nature was used against Egypt, so that's why we can understand the Arab Spring. And these are people creating enemies to make up for their failures. So it's a little mad at the moment.
Is there anything that gives you hope?
A lot of things give me hope. It's just that things are so bad gives me hope, because they're not sustainable. But at the same time, it's very depressing. I mean, I irrespective of how I feel, and I share everyone's frustration, but what I do is I look at politics and sustainability and the structures that exist, and we're doing horribly with the economy. And I'm not talking about the formal definition of economy or growth or so on. There is a growing disparity, and the same reasons that were there pre-2011 still exist and getting worse. So it's not a matter of hope or no hope. It's just a matter of expecting that things won't be like this anymore. And also, you have this generational divide. That is really, really hopeful. Like, wherever you go, younger people are at odds with their parents or their older relatives, and they're fighting because they can see the regime for what it is. There's been this kind of awakening. They just don't have power right now, and maybe sometime in the future they might. They just might, and that really does give me hope.
There's one line that has been written all over Cairo for a while and all over Egypt. Saura Mustamara. The revolution continues. Is it sort of on hold now? Did someone press pause? And who's going to press play again?
No, I mean, I don't think it's on pause really. It's on the other end. The revolution is getting beaten, defeated. You know, it's not at a standstill. The revolution continues in as much as the oppression does, right? It's a counter-revolution at the moment that's continuing, and the revolution is just sort of dying, being subjected to torture, what have you, you know. It feels so distant right now. The revolution continues was such a powerful phrase at a time, even when we thought there were dark times, and it was inspiring. And right now it just feels there's no revolution. But I think it does continue in a lot of ways. But it's just, you know, the path it's taken is really, really dark right now.
Hopefully, next time I come to Egypt, there's going to be brighter days. Coming in November, hopefully.
I mean, if you can film when you're in Cairo, that's a brighter day. So, hopefully you do come and it's a little better. It's gonna, you know what? I'll tell you something. After elections happens, this is where we're gonna find out everything. People who've lost have lost. People who've won have won. And then the new dynamic, the real new CC order becomes clear. Is it sustainable? That's when we find out. So it will get better, but it needs to get worse. That's for sure. But I'll see you in November.
From words.
Cool.